Okay. Yeah, he showed up at West High a little bit from one time or another. Oh, this is so much better.
Yes, it is.
You know, you can tell that I'm related to Dennis in height, not to Rich.
Yeah.
This is actually a good opportunity for me because my family moved to Indiana, to Indianapolis in 1999. And so I haven't had a chance to be in touch with Dennis very much for the last 20 years or so. We would come over to Phoenix and visit every 2 or 3, 4 years. And whenever we came, we'd get together with Dennis. I'd try to call him on his birthday and special occasions, but I haven't had a chance to find out what he's been up to really lately. And so I'm listening to fill in some of my gaps. I can talk about ancient history, and I'll try to fill you in on some of the gaps in what you haven't had a chance to learn about Dennis. He's my uncle, but I'm a year older than he is. When my mother had me, her mother decided not to be outdone. And so just over a year later, Dennis appeared. His mom was 46, I believe, when he was born. And back then, you know, older mothers like that were not very common at all. But Dennis's mother was a strong character. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's a little bit hard to work with. And so there are some things about Dennis that if you're trying to figure out some of the things that were influences on him, just to be honest, he had a very strong mother, kind of domineering, but she loved him and she was a great contributor to the rest of our family. And so we've got memories that go back. Dennis's family originally came from the Midwest. They moved from Kansas City out to Los Angeles in the late 1920s. So they were children of the Depression and pack rats and saved things. And his dad was a buyer for Sears in Los Angeles. He was one of the major people who purchased things for Sears, and so Sears and Roebuck catalogs were a big thing for us growing up. We felt we had to buy things from Sears just to be patriotic. Dennis had 3 sisters. The larger pictures over there are of his 2 oldest sisters. The one on the right is my mother, the oldest, Mary. The one on the left, I'm pretty sure, is his second sister, Margie. And then he had a 3rd sister who was born about 11 years later down the line, and she moved to Australia. We haven't heard anything from her for 20 or more years. So we've got that part of the family. And then Dennis was the caboose about 10 or 11 years after his sister Jean. We grew up in Los Angeles, and my family lived just a few blocks away from Dennis and his family. When we were growing up, we lived just a few blocks apart. We did things together. We would go over to his house, he'd come over to our house, and so, you know, he was a pretty typical kid. He collected comic books. We've been going through his house to try to bring some order to things and work on his affairs, and we found stacks of comic books. And so he was a normal kid, had a lot of many things that you'd expect. We went to the same schools, and I remembered yesterday, I was telling my brother Mike about it, that I was 9 years old when the church that my family was going to had a pastor who was interested in prophecy, and he was preaching about the rapture and about the need to make sure you had a relationship with Christ so that you'd be taken in the rapture. And actually, for me, the Lord arranged a little demonstration to get my 9-year-old mind into gear on that issue. One Sunday night, my family went to the Hoover Street Baptist Church, and we went into the foyer, and I went, walked into the auditorium, and I turned around, and my folks weren't there. I thought the rapture had happened. As it turned out, they had decided to take a right turn and go upstairs and talk to the pastor for a minute, and didn't tell me about it. Anyhow, it wasn't too long after that that I went forward at the end of a service and prayed to receive Christ, and that's the start of my Christian experience. I have never been a aggressive evangelistic buttonhole type of person, but probably the most aggressive evangelism experience that I remember is that not too long after that, Dennis and I went to the same grade school, and I figured, well, I better tell him about this accepting Christ business. And so we spent a half an hour during one of the lunch breaks walking up and down the basketball court at Raymond Avenue School, and I was telling him all the stuff that I understood about what you were supposed to do to know that you were going to heaven, and he prayed to receive Christ at the basketball goal. And I don't know if he would have remembered all that or not, but that's what I remember. And so he accepted Christ. That would have been when he was about 8. He was a grade behind me. Well, we moved from Los Angeles to Phoenix, Arizona. His family moved first. I think it was in 1960. Well, my family tended to follow his family. My mom was really close to her mom and dad, and so it was about a year or so later that my family moved to Phoenix. We moved to the house 7th Avenue and Indian School, that neighborhood, right next to Osborne School and Clarendon School. That's where we moved. My folks lived on 11th Avenue, and Dennis and his folks lived down on just at the south end of 11th Avenue and Osborne Road, just about. And the Rascals moved to San Diego County 2 or 3 years later. They decided they wanted to try that out. But they only stayed there for about a year, year and a half, and then they moved back to Phoenix, bought a house in the same neighborhood. So we continued that pattern of being just a few blocks from Dennis and his folks for all those years. Dennis was smart. He was a good student, as you pointed out. He went to Phoenix Christian High School, graduated from there, did just fine as far as I know. I never analyzed his transcripts. But, and then he eventually went, the place where he went to Bible college was Arizona College of the Bible. We found his diploma from there. I taught at Arizona College of the Bible. My brother Mike, that is going to share in a couple of minutes, also taught there. He taught there. How long did you teach there?
Too long.
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 years, right?
About 11, I think.
11, goodness.
That was too long.
Yeah.
And my uncle taught there.
Okay, what was his name?
Vince Morris.
Okay, actually, he was one of my teachers at Arizona Bible College, which folded the year after I graduated, and Arizona College of the Bible is the new one that started up. That's the one where I got to teach. I was there for like 27 years. And I remember Vince Morris well, he did some premarital counseling for me and a girl that I never ended up actually marrying. So I'm not sure how good a job he did. But Dennis got his diploma in Bible at Arizona College of the Bible, and he thought about going into teaching. He went to Grand Canyon College, got a master's. I think he got a teaching certificate. But for one reason or another, he didn't actually go into teaching. He ended up getting a job at Whataburger, worked his way up to assistant manager, and he was there for his entire working career. He had lots of gifts. If you go to his house, he has a huge collection of Bible study books. He has books including things like A.T. Robertson's Greek grammar of the New Testament, which is that thick. And I majored in Greek and I taught Greek for a long time, and I can barely understand what that book's talking about. And so if Dennis had that book and looked at it, he's smarter than most of us realized. Dennis's folks passed away a number of years ago. He continued living in that same house, working at the same job. He's faithful, he's loyal, he's consistent. He did have a great sense of humor. He was a bad influence on our children. They tell me that he was the one who, when they were little, when we would have Thanksgiving dinner, he taught them all to stick olives on all 10 fingers. And there are other customs that he corrupted them with. My kids also reminded me that Dennis was a great gift giver. At Christmas, he would give gifts to everybody that were obviously well thought out. It was just right for each person. And after all these years, they remembered, yeah, Uncle Dennis, he would give the good gifts, which we were glad because, we were low budget, and we wouldn't have that wonderful a set of gifts for our kids. Dennis helped out. Dennis has been involved in a number of churches over his career. He did spend some time at West High Baptist. He spent some time at Valley of the Sun Baptist. He attended services in the evenings at Calvary Chapel on the freeway sometimes. I know that he had some involvement at Bethany Bible Church, but Palmcroft, I think, was his home base. It was his center of gravity. And we are really grateful for the contribution that all of you have made to his life. You've already said that he was pretty private. He tended to be a loner. When my wife and I have come over here to visit him and have lunch with him on our quick visits through Phoenix, sometimes we have asked him, do you have anybody that watches out for you? I mean, has something happened to you? Is there somebody who would know and would help you out? And he would always say, yeah, I've got people in my Sunday school class that keep track of me. And we asked, is there anybody who would tell us if something happened to you? He assured us that there was, but he forgot to tell you guys. He was usually so systematic, detailed and all that. He missed that one.
Yeah.
But we're so grateful the Lord worked it out that somebody tipped off Rich so that we could find out about to Dennis's passing. Would have been nice if we'd known earlier, but Dennis was not one to ask for help or to promote things like that. I thought this morning of a verse that seems appropriate for right now. Philippians 2:30. Paul was talking about a fellow named Epaphroditus. Paul was in prison in Rome, house arrest for 2 years. The church at Philippi heard about that, cared about that, picked one of their members and sent them to help Paul to bring some cash to him, I suspect. And Paul said that he was getting ready to send Epaphroditus back home, but he said that Epaphroditus has really almost risked his life to make up for the help that you yourselves could not give me. New Living Translation says, Epaphroditus was doing for me what you couldn't do from far away. And I feel like y'all are our Epaphroditus, that you all have ministered to Dennis over the years, that you've cared for him, that he has felt supported and cared by you. And for the last 20 years, you have ministered to him when we were too far away to do much of it. And we're grateful to that. And we thank you. Thank you so much.